Alright, so quick note before the video starts. This video is going to be more of a rant type of video, which I know isn't really what you guys are used to from me. And so that's why I kind of have a little bit of a different tone in this video than usual that I didn't really notice until I was editing. But that's it, I just wanted to say that real quick. But let's get into the video.
I did not vote for him for MVP. I voted for LeBron James because I tend to be more of a narrative-based voter, and I feel like LeBron James took a Lakers team that had missed the playoffs 6 years in a row up to the top spot in the West after all of the dysfunction of the summer before. I did not vote for him for MVP. I voted for LeBron James because I tend to be more of a narrative-based voter, and
This is Ramona Shelburne. She is one of the people voting on the 2020 MVP. And she just admitted on national TV that she voted LeBron James for MVP because of a narrative. This means that she ignored Giannis leading LeBron in every major statistical category outside of assists because of a narrative. That is not a good look for the league. And yet, this is just the reality that we're faced with. Because over the last few years, we've seen the media and members of the media being able to decide votes of entire awards. And we've also seen them be able to push narratives that otherwise wouldn't really be thought about or accepted, but because they said it, now it's acceptable. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. We're going to be taking a look back at some award races that still don't make sense. We're going to discuss times where the media pushing a narrative played a factor in the outcome, and we're going to be discussing how these can impact a player's entire career. But before we begin, if you're new here, I'm Double D. I'm a huge basketball fan and I make NBA videos here on YouTube. So if you're also an NBA fan, or just a basketball fan in general, feel free to hit the sub button, and click the bell to be notified when I upload more videos just like this one. I also noticed that over 90% of you guys that watch my videos are still not subscribed, so I would really appreciate that. Alright, let's get into the video. So given that almost every award in the NBA is voted on by members of the media, we probably should have expected this to be the case at some point. But it might be surprising to actually see how this plays a factor when you look at all the cases in the last few years. I said earlier that I would be talking about award races affected by the media, but really these are going to be more along the lines of award race outcomes that didn't really make sense at all, possibly due to the media or a narrative playing a factor. Let's start with LeBron James in 2013. He was absolutely amazing and he won his second MVP in a row and his fourth of his career. He was only one vote away from winning unanimous MVP, but he didn't because a man named Gary Washburn voted for Carmelo Anthony instead. I already made a video talking about this MVP race and the season in general, so you can go watch that with the card on the screen if you want. But for now, let's just listen to his reasoning for picking Melo over LeBron.
I just felt like Carmelo Anthony elevated his team this year to new heights. I mean, this Knicks team has been essentially a laughingstock in the NBA for the past 10 years. They reached the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. They won 54 games. They won 12 straight in April. Carmelo averaged 37 points a game in April when they were trying to lock down that number 2 seed. I just felt like he was the most valuable player, obviously, on his team and to his team. If this is a best player in the league award, LeBron James wins this every year. We know that.
And this is a conversation that I feel like a lot of people don't really consider when we're picking the MVP or talking about who should be the MVP or anything like that, is that does the MVP actually go to the most valuable player, or does it go to the best player on the best team? I've been seeing people say that we should have an award separate from MVP to kind of eliminate that problem. Maybe a best player and a most valuable player. Because the next case that doesn't make sense regarding this is Russell Westbrook. Now, I have no problem with the fact that he won MVP in 2017. I mean, he was incredible. He averaged a triple-double, which is something that nobody had done since Oscar Robertson did it in 1962, and he was even my pick for MVP that season. With everything that happened and with, Kevin Durant leaving, OKC was just kind of expected to become an afterthought that season, but they ended up winning 47 games before being knocked out by the Rockets. But what never made sense to me is what happened next, because a lot of people's reasoning for him winning MVP that season was because of the numbers that he put up. Well, in the following season, he averaged a triple-double, again, becoming the first player to do so in back-to-back seasons, yet he finished 5th in MVP voting. And last season, he did it for a third time, and barely even placed in the MVP race at all. He placed 10th in MVP voting in 2019. And the 2019 MVP race was interesting for a few reasons. That was one of them, but also because this was a case of the media and just NBA fans in general trying to create an argument of the sleeper MVP candidate. And you'll see this sometimes, usually when there's like a clear-cut MVP or two clear MVP candidates, people will often try to push the argument of maybe it's actually this third guy.
Up until the beginning of last week, everybody agreed that it was that far away that we were having unanimous discussions. So all in the span of 7 days, the conversation went from is Giannis unanimous to seeing sports analysts like Jay Williams tweet that LeBron is now in first place after this weekend. What? How in the hell do you go from where we were to where we are in a week?
And in 2019, that third guy was Paul George. Paul George had an MVP campaign, which people dubbed MVPG, and I mean, he was great. 28 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, and shot 44% from the field and 40% from 3. But you also have to understand that multiple people in a season can have an MVP type year without being the clear MVP. But let's go into the playoffs for a second. Because one thing that never really made sense to me is the fact that the regular season consistently has 120 or more people voting on it, while Finals MVP always has 11. And this creates some really interesting outcomes. For example, let's talk about 2015. Yes, we're going here again, because it still makes no sense no matter how you look at it. Steph Curry averaged 26 points in the 2015 finals. He scored 37 points in a pivotal Game 5, 17 of those points coming in the fourth quarter, and he was actually the leading scorer in the fourth quarter of that series at 10.8 points. And all of that was enough to give him 0 Finals MVP votes. So how does this even happen? Well, I talked about this in a previous video, but because of the way that people voted that series, it just had to happen. Because out of the 11 voters, 4 people voted for LeBron, 4 voted for Iguodala, and 3 voted for Curry. And so you can see the problem here. That was the original vote. But another problem was the fact that they didn't want to give LeBron James Finals MVP in a series that he lost and shot terrible in. And so the people who voted for Curry changed their vote to Iguodala to ensure that wouldn't happen. So Steph Curry, averaging 10 points more than the next nearest teammate, receives no Finals MVP votes. Which is actually kind of funny, because this and 2019 are actually some of the reasons that I wanted to make this video in the first place. As I'm sure most of you know, the Raptors were the 2019 NBA champions and won their first title in franchise history, and Kawhi Leonard was named the Finals MVP. But what you may not know is that despite how great he was in that series, his Finals MVP selection wasn't unanimous. He missed out on 1 vote. Now, you may be thinking, who got that vote? Maybe Danny Green or Pascal Siakam? Well, not exactly. Hubie Brown was the only voter that didn't vote for Kawhi Leonard, and he chose Fred VanVleet as his Finals MVP vote. Fred VanVleet, the man that came off the bench and averaged 14 points. But even with all that said, these aren't the only awards that are affected by this. Let's briefly go back to 2013, because in addition to winning MVP, LeBron also made it a point to become the best defender he could be, and went into that season with that mindset and the goal of winning Defensive Player of the Year. Well, he came up just short. He was the runner-up to Marc Gasol in 2013. But how he lost it to him doesn't even make sense, and honestly should never happen. Because Marc Gasol won Defensive Player of the Year, but he didn't make the all-defensive first team, just the second team. LeBron, however, did make the all-defensive first team, but he came second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. I've literally been thinking about this for so long, and I don't know how that can possibly happen. But another Defensive Player of the Year race that you could say the outcome was even worse was the 2015 Defensive Player of the Year race. This is one that would see both Kawhi Leonard and Draymond Green at the top of the race, and Kawhi would eventually win it, with Draymond coming in second. This does not make sense, because if we look at the actual voting, we will see that Draymond actually received 8 more first place votes than Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi won the Defensive Player of the Year because he ended up with a lot more second place votes, which ended up giving him the points that he needed to beat out Draymond Green. Now, how do you end up winning when more people thought you were second? How does that even remotely make sense? Now, with all this being said, I have no problem with any outcome in this video. I'm just confused on how these even happen. Sometimes it's the media, sometimes it's just weird things, but one thing that's for sure is it changes how we look at these players because of the outcomes of these award races. I mean, imagine how we would look at LeBron James if he won unanimous MVP, and Defensive Player of the Year, and the ring, and Finals MVP all in the same season. Imagine if Draymond Green had 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards instead of 1. Imagine if Russell Westbrook had more than 1 MVP. Imagine if Steph Curry had a Finals MVP. Like, all these are things that could have easily changed how they're looked at by almost everybody. But of course, the one thing that I always say, here in reality, that doesn't happen. But it is interesting to see all these different cases that would have changed how we talked about these guys to a certain degree. But we have people like this.
I did not vote for him for MVP. I voted for LeBron James because I tend to be more of a narrative-based voter.
And this.
He has navigated a China controversy and maybe the biggest tragedy in the history of the NBA this season. That's extra stuff that, you know, quite frankly, Giannis is not going through.
We have people like this voting on our awards. And so let me know what you guys think down below. Do you guys think having the media voting on awards is fine and these are just strange occurrences? Or do you think we may need to change who votes? Maybe to current or former players or something along those lines? Let me know. But with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, hit the bell to be notified when I upload, comment down below what you want to see next, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.